So, who is at fault for this tragedy, and how should Canada and the international community respond to it? Joining me now in Toronto, Costas Menegakis, the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Citizenship and Immigration. Paul Dua, the NDP's Foreign Affairs critic, is here with me in Ottawa, and in Montreal, Marc Garneau is the Liberal Foreign Affairs critic. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us. Costas Menegakis, I'd like to start with you and to know first if the Canadian government has been in contact at all with the Russians, respecting what must be a very tense situation on the ground in eastern Ukraine. And what I'm getting at really is especially regarding access to the crash site for international inspectors.
Well, first of all, Terry, let me just say that our thoughts and prayers are with the victims, their families, their friends, and certainly, particularly here in Canada, we lost a very young, bright Canadian, Andre Angel. Our thoughts and prayers are with him and his family at this very difficult time. We don't know exactly what has transpired there. All we know at this time is that an investigation needs to take place. We need to get to the bottom of this, and Canada is standing and ready and able to provide assistance should we be requested by the Ukrainian government to do so.
So far, no such request? So
far, no such request.
As if I can follow up with you first, today President Obama underscored the role that Russia has played in perpetuating the conflict, and but he said the plane was brought down by a missile fired from land held by the pro-Russian rebels. What is the Canadian government's assessment of who is at fault and what should happen next?
Well, we don't know specifically who did it. It's premature to say who is at fault at this time, but certainly Russia has fueled the situation in Ukraine. Ukraine is a sovereign democratic state. I think that I heard Mr. Obama's press conference. I concur, and we concur as a government, that the level of sophistication, the level of knowledge required to perpetuate such a heinous act on a civilian airplane certainly would indicate that those people that did it were well trained. It would be premature to point fingers at this time, Terry.
Paul Dua, do you agree that it's premature, or don't we know enough? Well, look, we know where the missile came from. We know who held that territory. We know they had those missiles. Isn't it time to stop sitting on the fence?
Well, let me concur with Costas on our condolences on behalf of our party to everyone who was killed in this horrific crime. And what was so sad about this, Terry, is that there's people who are on board. Every life is precious, but people who are on board were some of the best and brightest in terms of researchers on HIV/AIDS. They were going to an HIV/AIDS conference, and these are people who spent their whole lives trying to save lives, and they lost their life in this manner. But look, we need to lock down the area. This is a criminal investigation. This was an international crime, and you know about this well from your background in Air India. All of the evidence needs to be secured immediately.
Otherwise, it's no use, right?
And that's why the diplomatic piece is important here, and engagement with Russia, and a strong engagement to say, look, to President Putin, first of all, you have to condemn what happened. And secondly, we have to get to the root of this and to lock down the evidence. That's why this is really a play in diplomacy as well as criminal investigation. So what should happen is we should be working with the OSCE, but also joining others to say to President Putin, look, we have to make sure this criminal investigation goes forward. That means a ceasefire. That means this zone has to be cleared of any kind of interference. And that's going to be tough, but that's what we should be doing as a country.
Marc Garneau, is it getting a bit late for that, or do you think the evidence is already contaminated?
Well, there's no question that the critical piece of evidence here is the black box, and I hope that we're going to find this to get to the bottom of things. But I have to say I'm in agreement with my colleagues. I would also like to express my condolences on behalf of the Liberal Party for the families and friends of the 298 victims of the Canadian, Andre Angel, and his family. This is a terrible shock. I hope that, and I hope that Canada is offering all assistance that it can in the circumstances. We have quite a bit of expertise in analyzing black box evidence from very damaged black boxes, which could be the case here, but of course we have to find that black box before we can establish clearly what happened.
Although, aren't we hearing that the black box, or what somebody thinks is the black box, has disappeared? Mr. Menegakis, has the government got any insight on that?
I can't comment on that at this time.
Because we're hearing that some people are saying they've got them, other people are saying no, we've got them, and we're going to send them to Moscow. It doesn't sound very safe, does it, Paul?
Let me just say
Go
this,
ahead.
I want to agree with my colleague. This area right now needs to be cordoned off. It needs to be shut down so that the evidence does not get contaminated.
Obviously,
certainly we have the expertise.
Well, we agree. And the one thing that just
Absolutely.
came out this afternoon is that there has been intercept of communications, which sounds like it might have been those who are the perpetrators on the ground, and the communications suggest that they were in real time talking about the shooting down of the airplane. And so if that evidence, that has to be secured, locked down, and sourced as who these people were communicating about the shooting down of the plane.
If you'll allow me, I'd like to switch topics to a moment to the other ongoing international crisis, the situation in Gaza. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said that Israel is prepared to significantly widen its ground offensive against Hamas militants in the Gaza Strip. And Immigration Minister Chris Alexander repeated today that Canada stands squarely behind Israel's right to defend itself. But where does this end? When, if ever, does Canada introduce maybe a note of caution in its steadfast support for Israel and say, okay, it's time to pull back? I'd like to start with you, Mark Garneau, because you went to the Support Israel dinner the other night, did you not? The Liberals are four square behind Israel and behind the government, indeed, in its attitude to this conflict. Does that go on and on and on, or is there a time when you say, okay, enough?
Yes, Terry, we support Israel's right to defend itself. It has had something like 1,500 rockets fired into Israel. At the moment, they have made the decision that they feel that they need to get at some of the rocket launchers and the tunnels that are being dug into Israel's territory. And at this point, that is, from a tactical point of view, what they're doing in addition to their normal air involvement. So, as I say, Israel is continuing to be hit by rockets. They have a task to try to secure that. But let me very, very clearly say, I hope that every effort is being made at the moment to achieve a ceasefire, and that Israel, which has accepted two proposals for ceasefires, I hope that they will be joined by Hamas as well.
Paul Dewar, your party was not at the Support Israel dinner, apparently a scheduling conflict, so the party said. Is your party starting to wonder about the same question? Do we support Israel no matter what, all the time, every way?
Well, no, I just think I was on the show earlier this week and saying that, calling out the government for not being balanced, frankly. Look, yes, Israel has the right to defend itself. Yes, Hamas is using their rockets to fire indiscriminately at Israel. But we also have to note that the over 200 victims in this conflict, there are 2 Israelis who have died. The rest are all Palestinians, mostly civilians, Terry. The world right now is seized with this at the Security Council. And we believe we should be as good friends to Israel, but as supporting the people, the civilians who are taking the brunt of this in Gaza, to say, as is being stated right now at the UN Security Council, 1, get back to the ceasefire, and it was unfortunate that it didn't take, and that I do applaud a couple of days ago where the Israelis did get behind it. But right now is a very dangerous time. We're seeing more and more civilian casualties, many of them innocent bystanders who have no other choice, Terry. So we believe that our government should be focusing on that, getting to a ceasefire, and getting back to what should have happened before, and that is to open the borders in Gaza, but to also have a very strong oversight as to what's coming and going, so we can eliminate this threat of these rockets.
I'm running short on time, but I do want to give Mr. Menegakis a chance to respond. Do you see anything wrong with what Mr. Dewar just said?
Absolutely. There can be no wavering in the support for Israel. Israel is a democratic state being attacked, bombarded by a listed terrorist organization. We need to be strong, continue to be steadfast in our support of Israel, and to work with our international partners to put as much pressure as we can on the Palestinian Authority to disarm Hamas. The loss of lives is very, very regrettable. We're very saddened by that. But I will say this, it rests squarely on the backs, the responsibility for that rests squarely on the backs of Hamas.
All right. Thank you, Costas Menegakis, Paul Dewar, and Mark Garneau. Appreciate it very much.